All right, we're doing this. This is the very first presentation at LinuxFest Northwest. Hi, everybody. Applaud for LinuxFest.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so today's a little different. There's no slides or anything here. The whole goal of this is to talk about audio and video production on Linux. So we're going to walk you through how we produce our shows, as well as some of the stuff we use for video editing, some of the audio editing stuff, and then we kind of want to just have all of this here so you guys can see what we're doing, and you guys can ask us how to do things, and then we'll attempt to do it. Everything will explode, OBS will crash, and it will be awful. That's the goal for the whole day.
Exactly.
Here. So that way, hopefully, in case you guys are interested in this, you guys can go out and actually do something. How many of you currently are doing audio videos type of work on Linux, just so I can get a feel for this? This much?
Six, seven, eight-ish.
How many of you want to? Like, how many of you actually want to come out of this and be able to do AV work? Okay.
So that's cool.
How many of you here and you don't know why?
How many of you are looking for the bathroom?
It's wrong turn, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Matt and I do shows fairly regularly, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
And we like to do them without editing. So we're going to start there.
Or minimal editing.
Minimal editing.
Minimal
I do no editing.
I sometimes I like to go, wow, maybe the audio could be a little louder, little things like
That's
that.
ridiculous. If the audio comes out bad, it's the audience's fault.
No,
We'll
that's
just have to
clearly.
deal with it.
Okay. Well, we've established that.
Yeah, they'll turn the volume down. It's fine. So kind of what we like to do is be able to sit down, record, and just bang it out really fast. Video and audio editing is great. Post-processing is great, but that takes a whole lot of time, and I'm very, very lazy. So one of the things we use heavily is Open Broadcasting Studio, which is this software right here.
Exactly.
It's generally fairly fantastic. It's basically a studio in a box, so you can switch between scenes. So, like for example, you notice over here on the side we have these scenes.
So, yeah, I was commenting on them earlier.
Yeah, here's the thing. So right now, what you see here is what the video is recording. You notice we're actually recording it this way. But the people at home, if they watch this video after the fact, they don't get to see what we're doing on the screen.
Exactly.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add that. And so one of the ways you can do that is by having different scenes. And so like in this case, I've got these preset scenes set up. And this one's just set up to grab an application plus the video. You notice you can move everything around. I can put me over here and I'm up over there.
Oh, you can even do like Pong.
You can do Pong and boop, 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 boop. It's fantastic, right? But what you really want to be able to do is grab the whole entire desktop, right? Where's the desktop? Screen capture. So we just capture the screen and things get crazy in a hurry.
Exactly.
So then people at home can see exactly what we're looking at here.
Well, it's like DIY Inception.
Times like 1,000, yeah. So totally, going way into infinity because that's just how this works, because that's
It's a little
logic.
bit like a mirror trick, really. Yeah.
Right. So what's nice about this is there are lots and lots of different ways within OBS to actually modify things on the fly. Typically, we'll have a show set up and we have a number of different presets. I can switch between the logo, because I like the logo, just me, with the into infinity, and move around really fast. However, normally when you're producing a show, you don't want people to see you playing Pong with yourself like this.
Not generally.
Right?
That's a bad thing.
So within OBS, you've got studio mode. And studio mode is quite cool in that it divides things up, and so on one side you literally have what it currently looks like, and the other side it's what it could look like one day. And so you go ahead and I say, well, I really want this up here and this over there, and I want this up top. That's how I want my show to look from now on. And then you say, I want it to be transitioned for a cut. Boom, transitioned over, easy. I don't normally do that because that's a lot of work, and so what I do is I just let people see me move it around in real time because, again, incredibly lazy, very low production value. So that's kind of a nice little thing with Open Broadcasting Studio. The downside to Open Broadcasting Studios, you do need rather beefy hardware to actually make this work. If you have a nice like i7, you can do about 720p before things start to get really, really chunky and jittery. If you want to do 1080p or better video, you need like a nice high-end NVIDIA 1080 card. End of story.
Yeah, that's been my experience. I found that generally speaking, I've got an older i7. I mean, I'm not made of money, and it works well enough. But I have a reasonably decent dedicated graphics card, and by using it that way, it seems to be give me what I need to get it done. And I haven't had a lot of problems. I've even achieved 60 frames per second at 1080. It's worked. I tend to tax the CPU a little bit. You're not going to be doing that with game capture, but if you are just simply wanting to capture the desktop or capture an application, you can do that.
Right. And to give you an idea of the performance here,
there you go.
let's just H-top this up, right? So you guys can see exactly what we've got going on here. So you'll notice it's actually not too bad, really. I've got one core, and this is an i5, right? So this CPU is not the beefiest CPU in the world. You don't really need a high-end CPU to do this work. What you need is a high-end GPU.
Right.
I have heard some limited success stories of getting this going on AMD GPUs. I've also heard many horror stories of the exact same thing. I cannot recommend it because I haven't seen it actually working consistently for everyone across the board. However, if you do have a nice high-end GPU and like a nice Ryzen to go with it and whatnot, give it a try.
Good try.
What's the worst that could happen?
It could blow up.
It could blow up.
It could be
blow up.
Fire's bad.
Yeah, but the NVIDIA stuff does work. The downside there, of course, is if you want to use the NVIDIA cards, you need to use the proprietary, closed source, binary, awful, eat your children drivers.
You do.
That is like the only non-free piece of software in this computer is those stupid friggin' NVIDIA drivers. But I need the performance to be able to do a show like this.
Yeah.
Beyond all of this, you can do things at just about any resolution you want in this. You can have pictures and animations and transitions and all that, and that's great. One of the really nice things is the way audio is handled within this. So like, let's say you want to do a show where you actually are interviewing someone. Right. So like, I'll have Matt come on my show, not Skype.
Paying attention.
Good Lord, dude.
Okay, WebRTC.
WebRTC, yeah, okay. That's not that much better. All right, so you have someone come on, and what's nice is you'll notice over here, we've got multiple options for bringing in audio. So we've got the microphone right here, and if I unmute this, I can also bring in anything from the desktop. And what's nice about that, because then if you're just having a chat with someone via whatever video conferencing app you have, you're bringing their audio in. Exactly. And what's extra cool are the filters that are made available with inside OBS. So you notice I have a very standard compressor set here. You don't even really need those. The compressor within OBS is okay. It gets the job done. But what's really quite nice is the noise gate. Mm-hmm. Now, the noise gate will allow you to, well, hold on a second. Yeah, remove that. Oh, no, sorry. I got ahead of myself. I want to talk about ducking. Get an compressor going. This is why I have a compressor. The compressor is average, but it also does ducking. Does anyone know what ducking is?
So I was raising my hand. I was going to say, can you tell us what a compressor does for this?
Oh, yeah, that'd be helpful.
A compressor, so it's kind of, if you take a piece of audio and you compress it in a certain way, you get a certain result. So if you listen to like NPR a lot, they compress the hell out of their audio. Like they use a microphone, they crank the gain, and they send it through about 18,000 tube amps, so it sounds like you're listening to NPR. And it kind of has that particular sound, right? And it's very cool. A lot of radio personalities do that. That's usually what most people that are doing shows use the compressors for, is to try and give themselves a little bit more of an NPR sound.
Well, one thing I want to point out is a misuse of a compressor is when you're watching television and the commercial blasts you across the room. That's a misuse of compressing
That's also
compressing
bad.
audio.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's doing it incorrectly. So.
Correct. Yes.
So it sounds like you're discussing sound level compressors as opposed to MP3 compressors.
Yes, yes.
Right.
This is not like compressing the audio to make it smaller. It's actually to.
We're playing with waveforms, essentially.
Yes.
It's like basically if you were to put this in Audacity and you have a waveform, if I take a piece of existing audio and it's there, but I don't really necessarily want to amplify it. I just want to give it a little more presence. Sometimes doing a compressor effect, whether it's live or in Audacity, will present a nice little something to work with.
Yeah.
Because then you can start messing with leveling that off and whatnot. So.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Man next to that man.
Can you literally define compression? My understanding is compression is basically compressing the dynamic range so that
Yes.
instead of having loud parts and soft parts, everything's about the same audio level.
Yes.
A little bit of normalizing.
You can define it somewhat though, depending on what tools they give you. Like I said, within OBS, the tools are somewhat limited. Like the options you see on the screen right now, that's pretty much the options they give you. You can change, up the gain and a couple other things. That's about it. But their compressor filter has ducking in it, which allows you to make it so that when the audio source from one source is making a lot of noise, it quiets down the other one. So it's great because then if Matt's talking and we're doing a show and I don't want him to be talking anymore, I just start talking real loud and no one can hear Matt. It's fantastic.
It's great. He utilizes that a lot. Actually.
Constantly. That's pretty much the entire show I produce.
Yeah.
So that's actually really nice. And you can do ducking both ways.
Yep.
So like you notice in here I've got 2 audio sources and you can have more than that. But I pretty much just use my microphone and whatever's coming into my desktop. And I can say if my desktop's making noise, make the microphone quieter. But I don't have to do it the other way unless I want to. Which is really kind of handy. So you can really set things up nicely. That's quite nice. Now, within OBS.
Oh, question.
Yeah.
Matt said that you can do this in Audacity, but since you never do any post-processing,
This is stuff I'll be commenting on because he doesn't have any idea.
Yeah, I don't do that.
He has no idea.
you effectively think all the tools in OBS are good enough because that's effectively what you have to use.
All right. So to be fair,
And our opinions will differ on this.
our opinions are going to differ on this one. If you're going to do work that is truly pro level, you're going to do a lot of post-processing work after it's recorded. I do really crappy work. I am lazy. I put all of my eggs in the hope it's good enough when I record it basket. And it's very rare that I'll do any editing. Whereas Matt, you'll notice in a lot of
Jack
his
Audio
shows,
sound mixer. I actually have multiple filters running at the same time as I pipe it through. I don't even sound like that when I talk in real life. So I got a lot of stuff piping it through. So and that's taking the overkill approach. But from a simplification approach, honestly, for just a single person talking into a microphone, you can do it with the tools that presented to you with Audacity or with OBS. You don't have to get that fancy. It's only when you're trying to get into pro level stuff. Maybe you're doing audiobooks or things like that. Then you might care a little more.
Yeah.
Because they're really picky.
I only really pop open Audacity when I do something really stupid. Like when I
Today.
make the like today I might need to edit this, but we'll see. Right?
Exactly.
We'll get into Audacity in a moment,
Yeah.
just because it is worth checking out.
Sure.
So within OBS, there's a couple of things you're going to want to kind of pay attention to. The first thing is the theme for OBS. It gives you
Critical.
dark and others.
So there's right and wrong.
That's awful. Okay, back to dark. So always have it set
Exactly.
to dark. Now, OBS allows you to do streaming as well as recording, and it does handle it simultaneously really, really well. I've done 12+ hour streams with this while recording, and it handles it very well. In fact, it handles the streaming better than recording sometimes. You can also make it so that when you are compressing your video, you're using the actual same stream to save it out, which if your system is feeling overtaxed, that's very, very handy. And here's where we set that up. So when you're setting up your encoder, the most important thing in the entire world, literally the whole world, is that it's set to a hardware encoder.
Oh, yeah.
If you're using a software encoder, it's going to be a bad time. It's going to suck, it's going to be slow, and you're not going to be happy at all. No matter what type of processor you have. You could have, quad state-of-the-art Xeons. You're not going to do 1080p decent video at any reasonable frame rate.
Then why have them?
That's a very good question. I have an i5 in here. overkill for what I do, honestly. Once you've got a nice GPU in here, you could have a very low-end i3. I could put an old Core 2 Duo in here, and it literally would do just fine. The CPU is not going to be the bottleneck if you've got a decent GPU. So spring for the 600 plus bucks for that really nice graphics card. It's, I know it's hard to do with all the stupid Bitcoin miners, but still, I mean, it's worth it for this sort of thing. There's just no way around it.
So a lot of the settings in OBS are going to seem really redundant, or why the heck do we have this? Why use this stuff? A lot of times it's something's not working, so it gives you the option of working around. It also helps with troubleshooting. Oh, okay, so it's actually stemming from this problem. So a lot of times having those tools available to you allow you to kind of manipulate around.
Yeah. Okay.
In my opinion.
So for the software encoding, really the only value is if you've got a laptop and it doesn't have a nice GPU in it.
You want to do 420.
And you, yeah, really. I mean, do standard definition. So I had a Dell XPS 13 with a nice i7 in it, right? The current, not the current gen, but the previous one. So nice machine. I could do 720p video without too many scenes in the mix, and it pegged my processors all the way, which means there's definitely no chance of doing gameplay videos. Multiple video input sources was just out of the question. But for just doing some simple stuff like me with a web browser and like some title text, it worked at 720p. But anything beyond 720p, you need a GPU.
Hardware encoding dedicated NVIDIA's graphics.
The other thing is to make sure not only that is set for both the streaming and the recording encoder. This is really, really, really super critical. But the other thing is the recording format. And you'll notice at the bottom here, it's got this big, stupid yellow warning that says recording to be saved as MP4. It could be unrecoverable. And that makes sense. MP4 really needs to finish its recording and encode down and finish and encapsulate that file.
It's an evil container.
It's an evil container. However, other types of formats don't play as nicely with various services. So you'll notice if you do, like, let's say an FLV file. An FLV file has all of its own particular problems, and when you send that up to, say, YouTube or various other services that transcode it, you're going to lose a little bit of video quality, and it'll take like 5 million years for YouTube to convert it because it's annoying as hell. So you kind of pick your poison with which format you go to. I literally go with MP4 because it's what I've found is if you use OBS and something borks, you're borked.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're not really gaining.
Yeah, if it crashed, you're gonna have to start over anyway. So I just ended up going with MP4 anyway.
How does YouTube do with MKV?
Does YouTube?
Last time I checked it just kind of choked on it.
Yeah, it just kind of chokes. Yeah.
So you'd have to convert it after the fact.
Right. And again, in converting things after the fact's not that hard, but it takes time. I'm lazy and I'm tired, and so like if you.
I'll tell you, I've been doing 2K resolution recording and streaming, and then you save it as an MKV, so I save it, and then I'll just send it off through Handbrake and let that go out, and then upload the MP4
Seriously.
and then that to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. You end up needing to go through a multi-step process like that. It's true. It is what it is. It's not the worst thing in the world.
One pro tip with audio video in general, just as a collective thing to remember, is garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you can't, it's like you can like the zoom and enhance with pictures. That doesn't work that way. So it's much better to start out with way more quality than you need, and then you can get
Here we go. So let's talk about that briefly. So within Open Broadcasting Studio, you can set what your base canvas is, and this really is think of it like in GIMP or Photoshop or whatever you use. Here's what the size of your image is, laying everything out, and then you set your output, your scaled resolution to whatever you want. So just make sure that your base canvas is as large or larger than what your output is.
Exactly.
I highly recommend for both performance purposes and so that you can really see what you're working with, just keep them the same. There's really not a whole lot of value in my opinion of having the scaled and the canvas be separate. Just keep them the same, set them, make sure you've got it in there. Also, you can change your frame rate, your frames per second there. This is really a personal thing. I like things at 24 frames per second because that's what film does, and it looks like film, and it makes you look professional if you choose it. You'll notice I have 30 frames per second set here. That's because I forgot to change it before we started recording today. There really is no other reason for it other than, again, I'm lazy and I forget things.
So ignoring everything he just said, because that's terrible advice. No, I'm just kidding. No, for 60 frames per second if you're doing video games or something, or you're trying to capture your breakdance moves. Otherwise, everything else in the universe is 30. You don't need to go 60.
Big, awesome movies are 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
When I watch The Avengers, there's 24 frames every second
but you're
coming
not
into my
Captain
eyeballs.
America. You're not Captain America.
I don't have to be Captain America. He's on the screen and he looks rad. Are you saying if you sat down right now,
Yeah.
I handed you a friggin' controller, Captain America was on the screen, and
Okay.
it looked just like Avengers at
Sure.
24 frames per second, you'd be like, this frame rate, stupid, and you'd walk.
Oh, no, I'd up it to 60 just on principle.
It's ridiculous,
No,
man.
in all seriousness, though, the only time you ever go 60 is for gaming. Honestly, you don't care. 30 is more than enough. That's really, and if you want to do 24, that's fine too.
24 is
That's-
film.
If you want to look like you're doing a stop motion picture or something, you do what he's talking about.
Just well, here,
Thank you. Anyway, yeah, it's
you guys
fine. It's
remember,
not a wrong answer.
You guys remember when the Hobbit movies came out?
Yeah.
All right, so the Hobbit movies came out at, what was it, 48, right? It was at 48 frames per second. It looked friggin' weird. It looked weird. It was cool, but it
48's a weird. That's a weird
felt
frame rate, though.
weird.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, but what is 60? What is 60?
60's literally
60.
it's because you're trying to match. You're trying to get as high. Anyway, it's a game.
This is a
thing. You don't
difficult
know.
discussion.
You don't
to be
know.
having.
You don't know.
in the wall.
So what I want to do is tutorials of
Yeah.
what goes on the command line. And I just want to see what's on the command line, and I want to talk over it.
Okay, there you go.
Easy.
What,
Yeah.
what characteristics should I use for that use case?
Here's what I would do. Nice and simple. Get OBS up and going. Here, I'm going to turn off this turn off this screen. So I'll even turn off this little lower third thing here. So you put in there a video capture device, right? And actually, this is a good step. We'll just walk you through beginning to end on how to do capturing for command line tutorial. Notice I have an HDMI camera out here. This is actually kind of a tricky part of this. You can use a webcam such as this. Those will work just fine. If you want to up your game a little bit, there's two different levels you can really hit. The real top of the line would be find a nice DSLR that does HDMI out cleanly, which is easier said than done. Most HDMI out and most DSLRs show like an overlay of all the menus, and it reduces the scaling down to whatever they display on their little built-in screens on the DSLRs. But there are a few that will do a clean HDMI out, and if you just look for a clean HDMI out DSLR, you'll find a list of the 4 or 5 good ones. Yeah.
People with Canons, Magic Lantern firmware.
Yes. Canon Magic Lantern firmware is a must. But it's not my fault if you brick your camera. But it will allow you to make it so you can do a clean HDMI out and turn off all the menu items. The other thing is, if you want to be a little bit cheaper, grab yourself a nice little kind of a handy cam. You can get like a Sony or a Canon camcorder. They're not as nice as the DSLRs, but you can pick them up for $100 and $150. Most of them do a clean HDMI out. Verify that first online, look at the models, but most of them do clean HDMI out. From there, I don't see if my USB cable is not long enough here, but down here I've got a thing called a Magewell. There's a couple of USB capture devices that will let you take in HDMI signals and convert it to USB. And what it does is actually just brilliant. It runs great on Linux because it just pretends like it's a webcam. So that's it. So I can take the HDMI out from any camera, stick it into this Magewell, and these get a little bit pricier. You're gonna look at more like $200 for a capture device that just does a single line in. There's a couple of brands out there. I highly recommend Magewell. I have no affiliation with them, but they work, whereas a lot of them are flaky as hell. But the Magewells work really well. I use this one. It treats it like a webcam. So what I've got right here, it literally is a webcam as far as every piece of software I have is concerned. Okay. And what's cool is you can then use it for your video chat too and have a nicer camera than anyone, and everyone will think you're fancy. All right, so once you've got it in there, then OBS says, okay, I want to use my video capture device. You set it to be whatever camera you want. Like in this case, I have it to be set here. I could toggle over to my webcam. Exactly. No, I'm not going to do that. Let's go back to the nicer camera. Did it crash?
Cancel. There you go.
Ha! Look at that.
Yeah,
It's got audio going, but the video's crashed.
Oh, that'll go.
And we're back. Will we go again? No. All right, we're going with the webcam for a while. Yay for Linux!
So, what did we learn today? We learned that you don't do this in live editing.
All right.
Bad idea.
So, what we
You said yay Linux. No, that happens on Windows as well.
Oh, I know, but this is LinuxFest. We're supposed to make fun of Linux. That's our job.
Yay, tech.
All right, so I'm going to go here, and what you then do is do a window capture.
Yeah.
So add in, do a little plus, add into your source window capture, and then you can select whatever thing you want.
The window you capture, the title of that window, so in his example, it's actually showing the terminal. If it's a browser, it'll be the title of the web page you're on.
Yeah.
That's how you make sense of all the stuff from the pull-down menu.
Now,
'cause
what you'll
otherwise it's
notice
convoluted.
is when I just tried to do this, it didn't work. Right? Now,
Oh.
that's not unusual. Now, here's the thing. OBS is excellent. It's a great piece of software. It also blows chunks. Every now and then, it just fails to capture things. Certain terminal emulators, if you have Chrome as a web browser,
Yeah,
you try and
it's not
capture
right.
Chrome from OBS in current versions, just doesn't work.
Firefox does, but
Firefox works fine. Old versions of OBS work fine. Probably new versions of OBS coming later will work fine. But it's like every version of OBS, some random applications just can't be captured. However, you can cheat this.
Yeah.
So what you do is do a full screen capture, just like we did before. It's the Alt key or Control key? Alt. Hold down the Alt key when you're resizing these, and you can literally go in and crop your scene to be, well, here's the little terminal I got going on.
Yep.
And then boom, I've got.
And it's
Don't
a
move out
much
of the way.
easier way to crop for sure.
Right, and then it's a much easier way to crop.
I mean, there's other ways of doing it. You can actually.
And then you
go-
can resize it, and you can really zoom in. Actually, that's really fun. You can go like this, go, what? And I really just want to look at that bash prompt and
It's
nothing
so
else. And I
exciting.
want it to be ginormous.
Get it all
And it works
pixelated.
just fine. So that's another way to go with that. You'll notice if you watch any of the shows that matter, I do on the regular, half the time, we can do a capture of the window we're using, and it just works seamlessly and flawlessly. Takes 2 minutes to set up, and
Usually.
we go. The other times, we've updated OBS recently, and we can't capture stuff, so we have to set up our stupid desktop a little differently and capture the whole screen and crop things weird, and it drives me crazy, and I swear a lot.
Pro tip on that: when you get a working version of OBS, save the package. Don't depend on to get it elsewhere. I've learned this the hard way. I've got 4 versions saved. So if I hate one, I can actually go back and, like if it's a deb package, for example, let's say Ubuntu or whatever, I can actually go back and say, wow, this version was terrible. Uninstall it, reinstall the old version. Okay, I feel better now. Just like you would with any operating system. It's kind of a handy way of going about
It's
it.
really friggin' handy.
It saves me a lot of frustration because I don't always have time to want to know why it's not working. I don't care. I just want it to do its job.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Before we, I'm going to show one more thing, and then let's move on to some of the other stuff we've got available here. First and foremost, color formats and color spaces, unless you know what you're doing within any of these, don't touch them. Because most of the time the presets are pretty much normal, and so unless you really know your way around this sort of thing, just ignore that entirely. You're not going to see much of a difference on those for, like, if you're recording tutorials of yourself with a terminal, no one's going to care what color format or color space is in because no one will ever be able to tell the difference. One of the other things I would just like to point out, because this is awesome and this makes you feel like you're in a studio, is setting up hotkeys with inside OBS is so much fun. So once you set up your scenes inside here, you set up all your scenes, you notice I have them numbered. You can name these whatever you want. You don't have to have them numbered, but then you can go in, set your hotkeys and your settings to be switch to scene. And I literally haven't set up on my numeric keypad. So I start my shows out on 1 as a title scene, and then I have starting and stopping recording set as hotkeys. So I hit plus sign to start recording, and then I can toggle over, like right now, like let's say I've got, boom, this is just my title screen, and then I'm like, hey, welcome to my stupid show that people watch for some reason. And then I can move over to, what was the thing? This is number 6, which is the best view I've ever made on any show.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's nice because you're not having to like monkey with your mouse when you're doing this stuff. That's certainly,
Right, and you can just have it off to the side. If you've got one of those fancy, like Elgato and a couple other companies make those like scene switcher little like 10 keypad things, or you can just use what I like to call a cheap keyboard,
Right.
and that works fine as well.
Well, no keys.
Actually, just as a tip on this, if you have a microphone going on, it's going to pick up your key presses.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to fight that is buy yourself a cheap, stupid keyboard.
Yeah.
So I have a really nice mechanical keyboard. I never use it to record my shows because otherwise it's chank, 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 chank during the shows. So I went and bought this cheapo Logitech. It was like $40, it's a little wireless one. The keys are awful and make me want to vomit on them because they're like those flat membrane awful keyboards, but they're quiet. They're so quiet, and that is really important if you're switching between the scenes. Otherwise, it will get picked up on the microphone. Just as a little tip, sometimes cheap is good. All right. So let's say you've been recording this. You've been getting this all rocking and rolling within OBS, but you need to make some edits.
It's going to happen, yeah, especially if you're starting out.
Audio or video? Which way you want to go
I'm going to
first?
say probably video.
Start
first, because-
video.
Yeah. Let's say they got audio working perfectly.
All right, so on the Linux side of things, I think it's a pretty well decided among the video creator community that the only thing that is worth using is KDN Live.
That's my opinion.
Does anyone use anything other than KDN Live?
What is there?
Bingo!
Ouch! Yeah, there's a few of them. Glowblade, Open Shot.
Only long enough to go back to Caden.
Right, yeah, you use like OpenShot, and there's a wide variety of other ones, PTV, a bunch of things, but none of them function
No.
for any length of time. A lot of them, like OpenShot Video Editor, has amazing functionality. It got
does.
green screen tools, really cool transitions. It's even got a little simple like this video rated G, you know, with the green
It's got
screen.
a lot of
motion
Blender
pictures.
effects that you
It's
can
got all these
incorporate,
cool
yeah.
effects to play with. But the video editing in it just crashes all the time, and it just drives a person to the brink of insanity. So KDN Live is it. Even if you're not a KDE person, you've got to go KDN Live. So this is KDN Live. KDN Live is fairly glorious and very, very straightforward to use if you're coming from most straightforward video editors. Does anyone do video editing on a different platform right now? Windows, Mac, that sort of thing? It's okay. You can raise your hand. You don't have to be sheepish about it.
We got a
It's
couple
cool.
of it. Yeah,
It's
you're
cool.
good. You're fine.
All right. So, like, if you're coming from like iMovie or Final Cut or what are the others? Windows Movie Maker. I don't know.
Wow.
Vegas,
Yeah,
Adobe,
Vegas is
blah
good.
blah blah. This is fairly familiar. The hotkeys are a little different. The locations of the settings are a little different. And honestly, KDN Live doesn't do as many things as the big professional packages.
You can do a lot with it if you know what you're doing. Though.
Matt, rock and roll.
Matt
Matt spends a lot of time.
I
in
spend a lot of
KDN
time
Live.
going completely nuts with it. So the stuff you're really going to want to care about.
Do you want to bring in a video so they can show
Yeah,
them?
actually, bring me a different.
All right, I'm going to bring you
Yeah.
guys in a video
bring me-
clip here.
yeah.
So let's just bring you guys in.
I'm not trying to deal with your crazy mouse here.
I like my
Cannot
mouse.
deal with it. Oh,
All right, so this is a test recording we made. Oops. Just earlier today.
Yeah.
All right, so this is what we were testing things out with.
So basically, you got yourself a bucket over here, and it's got a video on it, and it's like, all right, that's great. That's my clip that I'm working with, and we have the preview of said clip over here, and that's awesome. And then we've got our little timeline. That's where we're going to be doing our heavy work here. Now I'm going to attempt to make his mouse work here, so let's bear with me as I try.
I use a trackball. It's nice. I like it.
So if you can't tell, I'm dragging this in, and I'm just going to position it wherever. And then I'm going to position it where I want. For now, for what I'm doing, I don't care about its position. Normally, you want it over here to the far left so you can actually work with it. But I'm going to then bring my little, you can see this little doohickey right here, the position. And I'm going to say, all right, so I want to cut that. You've got a few options here. Right now, we're in kind of a selection tool, the drag mode. I'm going to cut. So I can select that, or I can do it with a hotkey, but we're just going to do it here. I'm going to pick a spot. I'll do it right. You can see the red line there. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And I've made the cut. You go back to selection. This is very basic editing, by the way. See the little hand gesture? Holding my key to make that little grabbing motion, and now I can move it around. And that's basically taking a video clip and making a cut on it, making an edit. If you want to start doing other tweaky stuff with it, you can get into transitions.
tweaky stuff?
Yeah, you can get into transitions. You can see here where it says you can drag to add a transition. You can like fade from black and various things. You can get into your transitions and effects, and that's a whole nother. That's going down the red pill.
The transitions within KDN Live are fairly simple and limited. But
If you mix and
enough.
match them, you can do some pretty
But yeah,
crazy
it's
stuff.
it's enough. I mean, and if you think about it logically here, what do you need? And I know this is a little bit of a cop-out sounding,
But it's true.
But
It's
it
true.
is true. Like, think about it this way. Think about if you're George Lucas making Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope,
Yep.
right? There are, like, 2 transition types he used. Most of it is swoop, swoop,
Yep.
swoop, swoop,
Exactly.
and then whoop.
Seriously.
That's it,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That's the only thing he did throughout that whole movie. So if you ignore the special effects part of it,
Yeah.
you can essentially make Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope with Acadian Live with no difficulty.
Exactly.
There really isn't limitation there.
I'm gonna want a crossfade.
You can crossfade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
can do that. So
and it does a good crossfade. Sometimes
it
you
does.
might even, when you do a cut and you have 2 video clips, I like to separate the audio out. You basically right-click on the video clip and separate the audio out. And the reason why is because when I do that and I do a crossfade, I might want to fade the audio in. I don't always want an abrupt, because sometimes you get a click or a pop or something that doesn't really sound nice. So sometimes I'll separate the audio and then I'll do a fade in with the audio, leaving the video completely alone, and
Yeah.
it just feels a little more natural. Again, I'm a little more OCD about the video editing end of it.
he is
but-
way more OCD.
Way more OCD.
About everything.
Yeah, I really
Yes.
am on Twitch.
So I currently have to do some capture on both Windows and Linux.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
But what I've been doing, because I'm also lazy, is
Yeah.
I'll take the captures I do in video on Linux, bring them into Windows and use Camtasia, because it'll do text-to-speech captioning for me.
Oh,
Text-to-speech.
that's cool.
That's really
So I
cool.
was going to ask, do you
No,
have any... Okay.
no,
Not that I know of.
no. No, there isn't anything for that.
Script or transcribe
No.
myself.
On Freedom Pick, I did do a hack. You can use Google to do that. I mean, as far as like, if you're just trying to get voice to text.
Yeah.
But it's not going to do what you're wanting to. I mean, you can, again, long way
You
to
could do.
Kansas.
You know what you could do? Yeah, use the YouTube captioning.
Yeah.
Upload it to YouTube. Play it back while you're capturing the YouTube
Yeah.
video.
Seriously, yeah. Yeah, I've done stuff like that. Yeah, you can do
No,
that.
there's nothing though.
Just do what you're
this
doing.
doesn't have that. You'll notice, and I was just kind of scrolling through here to take a look at things because like there are certain filters and effects I use a lot, like the speed. I use kind of speed up and slow down. Like I did one where I was like 3D printing some parts, and well, I speed that up because you do not want to watch something 3D print for 3 hours. So that works out pretty well. It does have a great deal of filters. I mean, you look at it here, that's literally like one section of filters. It does do color keys and chrome, so you can do a green screen with Acadian Live. It doesn't work as well as it does under.
I disagree. I think if you get good lighting, I think you can make it work.
That's what.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion. But you can. And
It
same thing.
can.
And compositing is
It
dynamite
does.
if you know what you're. If you take
It
some
does
time
work.
with it. Yeah.
It does work. It's a little. The green screeny stuff is a little finicky.
It can be grainy, but
It
and
can
you're
be
going to have to
grainy.
really. I mean, other software
But
you
it
can
works.
software manipulate. You don't have to have as great a lighting. You really got to have good lighting if you want to use Kdenlive.
I have noticed, so within Acadian Live, and Matt might differ on this,
Probably.
it has a lot of audio filters.
Yeah.
I don't like them.
No, I don't either. I don't.
So what I tend to do is I'll do all of my first pass editing of the videos within Acadian Live, get the audio what it's gonna be,
Yeah.
so it lines up with all the clips, export my video once, bring that video into Audacity, tweak it in there, then bring that audio track back into Acadian Live, line it up, and export it from Acadian Live again.
Or you do what I do, and it's a variation of this. Just steps are a little different. Is I take the original audio, I do that separation I talked about, or I just drag the video file into Audacity. It
Yeah.
takes it in just fine. I get it all the way I want it
works.
to work, And then once that's great, I bring it all back, and then I do all my cutting because I'm lazy. I just prefer to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you were talking about Star Wars. What tools did they use?
We don't need to
use
talk
back
about
then?
Star Wars.
What tools did they use to
Lots
use
and
back
lots of models.
Exacto knives. Exacto
Really?
knives and film.
then? No,
and
not the electronic.
Running back and forth with the camera.
too, but I mean it was. I mean back then, video editing and film editing was editing film. I mean
Yeah,
it was. different.
there's physical razor
Yeah.
blades. involved,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean it is. This is just the digital representation
Exactly.
of what they did in those days with that. I mean, it's why it's even like a lot of video editors, instead of a little pair of scissors, they'll have a picture of an Exacto knife.
Yeah.
Because that's what they used in the old days. They'd go
Yeah.
with an Exacto knife down the
Seriously.
between
and
the
then
frame of
tape
film.
and then tape it back to you.
It was tape, yeah. It's just a lot of times what they use was it's a variation on Scotch tape, but it's just nice, simple, clear tape.
That way they can achieve their 24 frames per
It
second.
sounds ghetto, but like the best movies of all time are made that way. All right, so Kdenlive does work fairly well. Rendering it out, it can take some time depending on what you're doing. It is a multi-threaded renderer, so if you go in and say, I want to render this out, you do have options. If you are making, let's say, tutorial videos or whatnot that you want to put up on the YouTubes,
Yes.
for all of them to watch, you can't do Flash.
Yes, you could.
You can also
You could do
export Windows
Wow,
Media
wow.
Player. So you have options.
Yeah.
It really does export to everything you need to do. I would stick up here near the top. The only three you'll ever usually need are these three, and that's why they're under generic in my mind. WebM is nice because, well, it streams nicely. Most of the streaming services can handle it and transcode it very well. Same with MPEG-4, and then MPEG-2 is just really nice when you come across problems.
Yes.
You get a big file, but it also tends to render fairly fast, and it's also the format you're going to use on most physical media, like DVDs and whatnot.
You could also do 4K editing as well. I mean,
Yeah, it handles 4K editing pretty fine. We should touch on Audacity. Are there any questions on the Kdenlive front?
One last thing I wanted to show them, just as far as when you render something. What I like to do is I like to make my, let's select and then actually go to more options. And the reason why is this is going to help you a lot. As soon as I hit that, now I got things I care about, like quality. Bring that up a little bit.
See, I don't do quality. He does quality.
Yeah, so and audio, and 192 is overkill for audio, but that's fine, whatever. 15, even though it's a lower number, is actually what you want for Kdenlive. And then, of course, encoder speed. More threads are better, especially if you got a machine that can deal with it.
Right.
So you just pop that up. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, once you get that done, then you render it. You're going to do okay. You can do custom scripts as far as your rendering. Don't go to Reddit and just get random things. You're probably just going to cook your processor. Just go with the defaults. You had a question?
Don't go to Reddit and do random things. Is the best advice ever.
What are we seeing in the text box in the upper right-hand corner?
That is literally the properties that you can set in the UI there, just so that you can copy those and put them in a text file somewhere to save to copy and paste between.
It's
different
also
projects.
if someone does what I was saying earlier about going to Reddit and saying, "Oh, try this instead." Just drop it in the box and render it that way. You can do that. Like you can. There's actually hacks you can do to use more resources and whatnot. But it's. I like going with. I just kind of let it do what it needs to do. I trust its choices. I trust the software. I don't trust random.
It does a
photos.
pretty good job. Just so you guys know, so if you do set it like there to set it to use 4 threads or whatnot, 99% of the times that works just wonderful. If it blows chunks on you before starting to fiddle with other things, set that back down to 1 thread.
Yes.
Every now and then, with a certain type of project, with the right mix of effects and filters, for some reason it just blows chunks. Most of the time it works great. I very rarely needed to do that, but that's always kind of the first troubleshooting step in Kdenlive. Yes, how are you? Hi.
Oh, great.
Nice to hear it.
Before you go to audio editing, I want to go back to audio capture for a minute, just
Yeah.
because you never talked about your sources.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know, I can tell you're running Top OS, so that means you're running Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And that probably means you're using Pulse Audio.
Yes.
Unless you've gone to the hell of using Jack.
No.
I'm that guy. Yeah, that's
All right.
my department.
So, actually, this is actually pretty straightforward. With OBS, using either Jack or Pulse Audio really does work fine.
Yeah,
it really does. The one limitation here is within OBS, you can capture your desktop audio, but you can't really get fine tuning about it and say, I just want the audio from this
And that's Pulse
application,
Audio,
that
yeah.
application. Because it just grabs whatever Pulse Audio is dealing with.
Exactly.
You got to set up Jack if you want to go in and say, I want just the audio from just this application to pull in.
Yep.
Unless you mute everything else, on your system.
I know that Pulse Audio has them separate. Like there's
It
other
does.
places in the UI where Pulse Audio
It
knows.
does.
So when
Here
I-
are the different
And you
applications
can
running,
the
set the
them
volume levels and stuff.
within Pulse Audio. You can set that and mute everything but one application. But then for your whole system, everything's muted except that one application. Whereas in Jack, you can still be hearing in your headphones all your alerts, and you've got mail.
You can
and
set up
whatever.
if
That's
you're
not going
set
in
up
your
a
video.
monitor in Jack, and there's certain advantages. But you can also actually set up a monitor in OBS as well.
We aren't going to showcase setting up Jack here because if you've ever set
No,
up Jack, you know
that's-
that it is hell.
Yeah,
it is
I don't have
hell
time for
on
that.
earth. Unless you absolutely know that you need Jack, you don't need Jack. But if you think you need jack, give it a try. There's a couple of distros out there that have it pre-set up ahead of time. Ubuntu Studio is a good one. There's a couple of ones out there that work really well. That's a great way to go. There's I can't remember what the OpenSUSE respin is that has it in there, but there's one for that as well. And
at some point I'll do a public video for it. I've done a Patreon video for it. At some point I'll do a public video on it. It's not that bad once you understand what tool to use. Oh, it is not.
It's pretty bad.
It's not that bad. The hard part is it's not laid out well. It's not laid out in a way that I think is logical. So you take logic and you just kind of slam dunk that and start over. It's fine. But yeah, and as far as grabbing a source for pulse audio, it's really, you got inputs and outputs. You just grab what you want. So if you're wanting to grab an output, that might be something that's maybe an output. If you want to grab an input like your microphone, you just grab it from that. It's pretty simple.
Can you talk about, I'll call it the glue box, the box that you have the HDMI inputs and things that you don't normally find on a laptop, say, or whatever, like a box with all, like a mixer box, whatever you call it.
So for the actual hardware, mine's I use a Magewell USB HDMI capture. For audio input, you've got more options. So there's a couple of really great audio breakout boxes that basically are, as far as Linux is concerned, a sound card attached via USB with some audio inputs.
I got a little M audio at home, so I've got a hardware mixer that's just a mixer, just a standard mixer, and that's great. But it has no USB connections. That doesn't do me a lot of good. So I just basically plug that into my little M audio that acts as a sound card. It's treated like a sound card in Pulse Audio. So when you pull it out, you use Pulse Audio volume controls. It actually shows up as M audio. It's like, oh, okay, so I can select that as my input.
It just becomes your audio card at that point. I also am a big fan of these Blue Yeti USB mics.
That's honestly the way to go for it.
They're $100-ish bucks. They're pretty good microphones. They're not amazing, but they're pretty good. They connect over USB and they just show up like an audio card. So Linux just handles it, and it's wonderful, and it just works, which is, I love things just working. But between this, the little Blue Yeti USB mic and my USB Magewell USB capture, I don't need any other inputs in order to do the show. That's all we're going through. Like for today, we're just passing it through those two USB connections.
Even though they're separate boxes, you don't have any sync problems?
Yes, you do. That was a great question. Audio synchronization. Okay.
Oh yeah.
We can go in here. Advanced audio properties.
Which brings me back to Jack, by the way, but we'll get into that later.
We will get yes, so video input over USB does have latency in it. If you're using most HDMI to USB capture devices, it is between 100 and 350 milliseconds. You'll kind of need to play with it yourself because it'll depend on the particulars of your USB bus, which device you have, all that stuff. For mine, this little Magewell connected into my machine, it's about a 200 millisecond delay. What you can do within OBS, click on the little gear next to your microphone, go to Advanced Audio Properties, Sync Offset in milliseconds. Set that to whatever your offset is, and boom! All of a sudden the audio is synced up with my mouth. It's very, very nice. So that works out pretty well. And you can set your offset differently depending on what your different audio sources are. So like I'll be chatting with him and he'll be in a window and I'll be capturing it. But his audio is already in sync. I don't want to change his, so I just leave it as 0, set mine to 200 to basically delay my audio by 200 milliseconds so it catches up with the video. It actually works pretty well that way.
And when you're testing this stuff, it's also worth, what you're seeing in real time is probably going to be different what actually comes out being recorded. So when you go and actually look at a test recording, make sure it's set to where you want. Don't totally chance it based on what you're seeing in OBS, because that's not always entirely accurate.
You're just test tweaking that to get, I found it's 200 milliseconds. You did that by saying, well, here's 190. Here's
I actually measured it.
Really?
So I recorded a video with no thing, and I went, hey, and I just quiet, and then slap, and that way lined it up in my video editor. That's the moment when my hands connected, and then it's that far over until the audio hit. I zoomed way in, and then I found it. It's actually not 200. It's actually like 198 or something like that. But I forgot and didn't write it down, so 200.
And clapping's a good production tip for syncing up audio. It's actually very helpful.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah. Just sitting there clapping to yourself makes you just look crazy, and that's neat to do. All right, Audacity. So there are multiple audio editing and production suites. The two, in my opinion, that are worth talking about the most are Audacity and Ardour. And I'm not going to mention Ardour because it is huge. Has anyone used Ardour? It's great. It's a great audio suite if you're doing music production or you're really getting into stuff.
Yeah.
Ardour is the bee's knees. The learning curve is steep as hell. It's going to take you a couple of days to really get the hang of it. I mean, it takes a bit, right? But
YouTube is your friend.
Once you get the hang of it, yeah, and you watch about 80 YouTube videos on it, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Audacity, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward.
It's very easy.
This is Audacity. Now, Matt, when you sit down to do this, what do you do?
Well, the first thing I do is I'm looking at my levels, and it's like, if I like what I see, that's great. If I don't, then I'm going to come over here and click just to select that. And I'm just like, maybe I want to compress my audio just to see what that looks like in waveform terms.
Yeah, no, we were talking about the compressor under OBS. The compressor under Audacity is actually good.
Yeah, it's actually not bad.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
actually-
by comparison,
find
it's
it.
pretty all right.
If I can figure out where it is. Why am I not finding it? Oh, there it is.
Compressor.
Okay, so
It's alphabetical.
I know, right? So one of the things I don't really mess with personally, I don't do the makeup gains because it's just not really something I'm interested in. I don't really mess with any of the settings. I generally leave it at its default. So you can play with the noise floor and ratio and all that if you want. I don't really worry about it. Let's just click it. Okay, that's nice and loud. We got some really good. We're about ready to peak here. We're probably going to start edging into red here pretty quickly. So let's say I like how that sounds, but it definitely could use a little more leveling. Some people might go normalize. Nah, I don't do normalize. I'm lazy.
don't do
I
normalize?
don't normalizing's for chumps. I don't care. So I just make everybody really loud, and then I come over to limiter, and I say, all right, I'm going to go to limiter, and I'll show you why. I usually try to go with a soft limit, but you can go hard limit, and that's fine. So we'll go hard limit just for giggles. Again, defaults. I don't really worry about it. I'm not making up the gain. Hit OK. Let that cycle through. Oh,
It did it. It's a short clip.
Yeah, it was a short clip.
Yeah.
So, but you do notice that the peaks are now gone. I can further fine tune that. I can go amplify and really just start leveling that out if I want to come up with something consistent. Honestly, it just really depends on what you're working with. Again, garbage in, garbage out. Ideally, like here we got noise. I would assume it's probably noise. You can go in through and remove that sort of stuff, but honestly, it's if you can avoid it in the first place, you're better off because it's just one more thing to fool with. Because when you remove noise, it takes away a lot from your initial audio.
It does.
It really sounds bad. So it's
does
almost
sound
better
bad.
to just be like, can I cut that?
It is.
You know, cutting is honestly easier. in some ways.
Honestly, and this is kind of why I'm super lazy with my editing.
Yeah, and I'm.
As soon as you get down to the point where you're like, oh man, I need to do a lot of work on this audio file, it's gonna sound like garbage in the end. Like no matter what you do to it. If you need to get rid of a bunch of background noise, at best, you're gonna have these weird spots where it's gonna go oddly quiet and the ambient noise disappears, and then it's gonna sound different when you're talking.
Pitches can sound a little off.
It's gonna sound like the cheapest produced cable television show, like on public access ever, and you try to avoid that. So it's almost better, just as my personal recommendation, to let the noise be.
Yeah.
Just make it not annoying. So do what he does, put a limiter on it so it gets rid of the peaks and the valleys and whatnot, so it sounds reasonable. But just let the noise be. If there's a dog barking, don't cut out the dog barking, because a dog barking, every human's gonna go, oh, a dog. Whereas if you delete it, it's gonna go, they're talking.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and
And then it's like, oh wait, this audio's crappy. I didn't know
Seriously.
that until I heard this quiet spot where that doesn't have a dog barking.
Exactly.
And so just let the dog bark, let the train go by. It's really okay. I know we're running out of time. I want to make a couple of quick points. So there is a lot of limitations in the Linux scene in terms of video and audio editing. However, it is so much better than it was a couple of years ago that most of the big video shows you see out there that touch on Linux are mostly all produced on Linux nowadays. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago. There's really, for most things, like if you want to be producing like tutorials around a terminal, there is no reason that can't work wonderfully well. And not even jumping through hoops, just using like these 3 applications and that's it. You're fine.
And I use a webcam, by the way. You don't have to be real fancy with it. I
No.
use a higher end webcam, but it works really well.
What is it? The Logitech?
Oh no, it's newer than that. It's newer than this one. The reason why is because it's got a lot of the niceties you have in some of the higher end cameras, and so for $100 or whatever.
But yeah, like $100 nice Logitech webcam, he's right. Honestly, it does look really well.
You see me.
One thing to do, and we're not doing it right here at the moment, but if you want to make your webcams, your cheap webcams look good, put a really blinding light on you.
Seriously, yeah.
Light yourself up really well, because a cheap webcam in the dark, you're gonna look all grainy and dumb. Put a bunch of lights on you, and it's like, that's a bit much. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I look beautiful.
Oh yeah,
on the
I got a
screen.
couple of Home Depot cheap fluorescent garbage lamps. Work great.
They fantastically well. All right, what time are we supposed to? Are we past time already? Yes. All right, you guys can go. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, seriously.
Hit us up, whatever. Go enjoy the rest of the conference. Everybody go away.